David Price and Justin Verlander. When things were all said and done, it turned into the closest race ever in the history of the actual award itself.
It was like a one vote, right? One vote difference?
One vote. I actually have it in front of me. Price received 14 of 28 first place votes and finished with 153 points. Verlander finished with 149 points and 13 first place votes. So that means somebody else out there got one first place vote. But a one vote difference, 4 points separated the two guys. And when it comes down to statistically, I mean, I have their stats in front of me, so I'll give you guys what they've done in comparison to each other. Price went 20-5 on the year. He led the American League in victories and winning percent. Well, he was tied with Jared Weaver in victories and winning percentage. He had the lowest ERA and finished 6th in strikeouts. Verlander went 17-8 with a 2.64 ERA and helped lead the Tigers to the World Series, obviously. He led the majors in strikeouts, innings, and complete games. Price tossed 211 innings and 31 starts, while Verlander made 33 starts. I didn't actually get the amount of innings that he did, though. I do apologize for that. So
he pitched to which one? Verlander. Verlander had like 238 innings, I believe.
Okay, so
pitched roughly about like 25 more innings than Price did.
Now to me, with this being the closest vote ever, what do we think was the determining factor between the two pitchers?
I think it could be that, and this is a viable stat, no pitcher has ever won the Cy Young Award losing a game in the World Series. After losing a game in the World Series.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So now, are you attributing it to that, or are you just pointing that out?
If you want to, because like you said, it's like splitting hairs. I mean, Verlander may have had a couple more stats in his favor, but if you look at the overall body of work, Price,
Price won more when he was pitching.
Yeah,
but his team didn't make the playoffs. But Verlander
and also, I believe
did.
He had less losses too, right?
I think he was 25 to 17-8. So he had 3 more wins and 3 less losses. So you're talking a difference of 6 games.
Exactly. That right there is the determining factor.
Okay. Now, Mike, what do you think made the determination between what? Like we said, this is like splitting hairs, and obviously the voters felt the same way.
Plus, Price is a lefty, and I think looking at the numbers he had as a lefty, nobody's had those numbers other than I think Randy Johnson and one other person. There were 2 people that had stats as good as Price's.
Ever.
Yeah, as far as a lefty goes.
Yeah.
So he had one of the best years for a lefty. That's why another reason why I think he got is being a lefty.
Gotcha.
Well, I think also, I mean, if you remember last year when Verlander won everything, basically, he was just on another plane. He so clearly separated himself from the rest of the league, and I think this was just a case where, I mean, he had a great year. Don't get me wrong, but he was a lot closer to the pack this year, and I think what he said about Price, I would consider this generation's lefty version of the Randy Johnsons and everyone else he just named in that category. I think that's a good comparison. And he did have a year on par with those guys. So I think that's why he got the edge. I mean, Verlander can win Cy Young any year. So can Price, basically. I think it was just a case of, minuscule little edge.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, for me, I actually, and this is why I asked this question, because I didn't know if either one of you guys would say this. For me, any chance, now I will openly admit this on air, behind doors, I don't really care. I know both of you have a little more baseball knowledge than I do. But the question is, do we think Price pitching in the AL East had any determination on him winning this award compared to the AL Central, where pretty much Chicago was Detroit's really only real competition?
I don't think so. I don't think that necessarily this year played into it, because Verlander is widely known as either the best pitcher in the league or one of, I mean, if you're mentioning top pitchers in the league, he's always in the conversation. I mean, no less than top 5.
Wait. Absolutely.
Yeah, so when you look at it, I don't think you could say that this is, oh, well, he was from the AL East, so pitched against tougher competition. I don't think that, because everybody brings their A game against Verlander because they know how tough he is. So
You know where you're. Yeah. Okay. I just was curious on that one.
I was just going to say, I mean, listen, I think some of the things you said were right on, but, Price did win 20 games as opposed to Verlander 17. And as much as the Red Sox weren't the Red Sox of norm, you did still have the Yankees, and you still had you still had the Orioles.
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to look it up, too. I bet you Tampa Bay actually had more wins this year, even though Detroit got into the playoffs. I think Tampa had more wins. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that, actually. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right. Well, while you looked at, you were.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you.
I was basically done. I think it may be a slight little thing just because it was the AL East. And, the Orioles came from out of nowhere, and they didn't fall off this year. Price had to face those guys at least 4 or 5 times.
And Baltimore and Tampa Bay had some good games this year against each other.
Yeah, just to interject real quick, the Rays were 90 and 72, where the Tigers were 88 and 74. So the Rays actually did
had a better year.
Year, but it was just the Tigers won their division.
And you got to remember also, in the AL East, you look at the worst team in the AL East was the Blue Jays or the Red Sox. And then
Red Sox, yeah.
Yeah, and you look at the worst team in the AL Central. Twins, Royals, Indians. Far worse.
Pick one.
Far worse than the Blue Jays or the Red Sox were this year, in my opinion at least.
I agree with that. I'm not going to argue that.
We think all those teams are pretty bad, but I know what you're trying to say is that the separation of talent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, the last thing I would like to bring up with this topic before we move on is, does Verlander winning it last year plus the MVP have any impact on this? Now, I know baseball is not anti-giving an award to somebody back-to-back years, but considering how close they were statistically, do you think any of the voters were like, Verlander got it last year, let's give it to Price? Do you think any of the voters were just sort of like, you know what, this guy won 2 awards last year, he got to the World Series, let's give it to Price? I know I'm pulling out of nothing right now. I'm just this was such a close race. I feel like you can pull some of the one voter woke up on the left side of the bed instead of the right, so he went with Price instead of Verlander. These guys are that close to each other and what they did when they pitched. Mm-hmm. So, do we think that Verlander winning it last year at all had any impact on the decision to give it to Price this year instead of Verlander?
I don't think so. Honestly, Verlander had a great enough year where he got both, but also there wasn't a clear offensive counterpart to be like, or an alternative, I should say, to Verlander. He got it. I feel like if there was a better offensive player, they would have gotten the consideration for it last year. I think it was just a case of he had such an amazing year. And this year, like I said, he was brought a little more back to the rest of the pack.